Hi, everybody. My name is Smangele Mashazi from the Department of General Linguistics at Stellenbosch University. Today, I'd like to tell you a little bit about who we are and what we get up to. So the content that we'll be covering is what is linguistics? What do you actually study when you study linguistics? And why is linguistics interesting? We're also going to look at the kind of research that we do, like psycholinguistics and social linguistics. And then also we're going to look at what you can do with a background in linguistics. And finally, we're going to talk about how you can get hold of us. So what is linguistics? Linguistics is the scientific study of the origin, history, development, structure, and use of human language and communication. And when we talk about linguistics, we're not talking about learning loads and loads of languages, but rather looking at how all languages work. So what are you studying when you study linguistics? Well, you could be looking at the history or origin of a human language, the evolution and development of modern human languages. You could be looking at contemporary uses of language. I think a very topical issue is language use on social media, for instance. We could look at the development of language in young children, as well as the learning of additional languages in children and adults. In formal linguistics, for instance, you're looking at the structure of language, and I'll explain all the different sections a little bit later. And we also look at the creative and persuasive uses of language. For instance, how do we use language to do things like advertising or showing or indexing our identities? We also look at the use of language in society through looking at conversations, the media, and public spaces, and such things. So why is linguistics interesting? Linguistics gives insights into how the brain processes language and the relationship between language and thought. Have you ever wondered, for instance, what comes first, language or thought, the word or the thought? Have you ever wondered maybe if you'll be able to conceptualize something if you don't have the word for it in your language? Linguistics also gives us insights into our own behavior and human socialization. An example of this, for instance, would be the ways that we show respect in the way that we use language in different languages. So for instance, do you then say sisi, buti, auntie in front of people's names? Do you maybe use the third person to refer to adults when you speak to adults? Those kind of things reflect our socialization. Also, language is a tool for investigating the power of media. We've seen it even with the current situation of the pandemic. The way that we phrase things and sell it in media can be very persuasive and can sway many opinions. Linguistics also explores the power of language in various contexts, from politics to the arts. And it investigates various forms of communication and the influence of culture on how we communicate. Language is also particularly interesting because it's always changing. And it does this because we need ways to communicate about new things and embrace various modes of communication. A good example are all the words that came out of 2020 to help us speak about Corona and pass information around and express certain thoughts. And one of my favorite coinages was Corona coaster, which pretty much was explaining the emotional roller coaster of living through this pandemic, right? So one moment you're feeling like, okay, I can do this. I'm okay. And the next moment it's, oh my gosh, we're going to die. Corona coaster. There's lots of other coinages that have come up, like nothing burger or techlash. Another one that I certainly used a lot more of is Zoom. Some people would use Zoom as an adjective and say, I am on a Zoom meeting. A lot of us are like, hey, let's Zoom, and use it as a verb. Another Corona word that helped us to categorize things and describe things is super spreader. None of us want to be super spreaders. And to do this, or to avoid this, you must try and not be part of super spreader events. Other words help us to reflect the relationships that we have with other people. So one of my favorite ones is family, because family helps us to describe those friends that have been so close to us that they've become family. A recent one is sharent. Now, people of my generation do not have sharents because our parents didn't have smartphones, but maybe you have a sharent. A sharent is a parent who frequently uses social media to share photos or other details about their child. And GOAT. This one had me confused for quite some time. GOAT is the acronym for greatest of all time. And greatest of all time is often linked to Muhammad Ali. So if you do something that's particularly great and awesome, you too could be a GOAT. So what kind of research do we do in linguistics? Now, different kinds of linguists around the world do different kinds of research. In our department, we focus on the fields of psycholinguistics, sociolinguistics, language and media, child language acquisition, sign language linguistics, pragmatics, and formal linguistics. And I'm quickly going to skip through and tell you a little bit about these different fields. So psycholinguistics is interested particularly in how the mind processes language, how it processes your first language, your additional languages, how bilinguals process language, what happens when we code switch. Code switching is when we use different languages in the same conversation or even in the same sentence. It also explores the link between word and thought. Then we have sociolinguistics, and sociolinguistics looks at language in society. How do people actually use language? How does this agree or not agree with maybe the current language policies? How do language policies, for instance, accommodate everyone it's supposed to accommodate? These are sociolinguistic issues, right? How do we use language to manipulate each other, like the language of propaganda, as well as looking at language and how it reflects power dynamics? Does it reflect really who the people are in that society? Which language is coming up prominent? Why? We also then look at language in media. Then child language acquisition. This is also related to language in the mind, but it specifically looks at how children learn language, their first language and every other language after that. I don't know if you've ever wondered, because it happens so naturally, but I mean, at one point you were a baby, then all you did was cry, and then at some point you started babbling, and then lo and behold, by the time you're like 7, you're speaking like a pro, and no one actually taught you. So we look at what actually happens and the different developments that help children acquire language so naturally. And one very popular case study was Jeannie. In America, she was born in 1957, and she was kept in isolation until she was 13 years old. Now, because of this, she was deprived of any language input. And there is a critical period hypothesis that pretty much suggests that if you haven't had that language input early enough, you will struggle to acquire language. So she was a very once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to kind of see whether or not this holds. Sign linguistics. Now, this is a very exciting part of what we offer because not all languages are spoken. There she just said, nice to meet you. Anyway, sign linguistics examines the nature, functions, and structure of sign languages and the principles of sign language use, as well as the diversity and variation in sign languages. It also looks at sign language in multilingual and educational settings and the acquisition of sign languages with examples from South African Sign Language, among other sign languages. Formal linguistics. Now, I did say I would break this down for you. So, in formal linguistics, there are sections like syntax. Syntax looks at the sentence structures and parameters that apply in various languages when we form grammatical sentences. And then we go over to morphology that breaks it down and looks at how we construct words, breaking them down to their smallest units of meaning that we call morphemes. So for instance, in English, S is a morpheme because when you add S to the end of a word, it changes its meaning by making it plural. Then you have phonetics and phonology, which then further breaks things down to the singular units of sound. And this is where you can acquaint yourself with the phonetic alphabet. And in the case of sign languages, phonetics is where they look at the elements that make up signs. So what can you do with linguistics? Well, with a background in linguistics, you can become a language practitioner or a language teacher. Now, practitioners include people like translators, interpreters, editors, copywriters, and the like. Linguistics can be combined quite usefully with subjects that explore the human mind, as we've already explained, and subjects that explore human behaviors like sociology and anthropology. A background in linguistics can also give you an edge if you want to go into media studies and journalism, and it can be quite beneficial in matters of intercultural communication within various settings. If you're planning to take some of the language subjects like English studies, isiXhosa, French or German, then linguistics is also really useful as a combination because it helps you to understand the structure of the languages. If you're planning to do speech therapy, for instance, then taking linguistics in your first year is quite essential. And if your degree is going to be BA Language and Culture, then it is also essential for you to take linguistics in your first year. A fun fact, did you know that the author of Lord of the Rings used his background knowledge in linguistics to make that famous Elvish language? Pretty cool, right? So maybe one day you can use your linguistics background to do something cool and awesome like this. If you have any further questions, please feel free to contact us. We are on the 5th floor of the Arts and Social Sciences building, but of course, because Corona, we are all at home. But you can still email Anthea. Her email address is antheaj@sun.ac.za. She will tell you everything you need to know or just direct you to the right person so that we can give you all the information you need. You can find us on Facebook. You can search for Stelly's Linguist, or you can follow us on Twitter at Marty's_linguist. So thank you very much for listening, and hopefully we will be welcoming a few of you to our department in the near future.